Hello again and welcome to another Mordian Glory video, and today guys I am really excited to share with you a progress update on the Great Mordian Restoration Project. Now for those of you that aren't aware of what the Great Mordian Restoration Project is, about 18 months ago I decided that my Mordian 50th rifles were looking a bit battered and worse for wear, and so I decided that I was going to completely repaint the army to pretty much the best of my ability. No matter how long it took, no matter how much it cost, the Mordian 50th rifles were going to be restored as the premier army on this channel, because they were looking really battered. Many of the models have been painted in a pre-tournament rush where getting them to a 3-colour minimum was more important than making them look good or awesome on the tabletop. And many of them have been painted by by a younger, much less skilled me, one who just wanted to slap paint on the models because your dad said you can't play with unpainted models, it doesn't look good, so begrudgingly I slapped some paint on them. And many of them were also eBay rescues, and I say rescue, they probably wish they'd stayed in eBay because I got them and then just slapped a coat of paint over the top. And so a lot of the models were in really, really poor condition, and a phrase that I like to use is a lot of them had a potato face, where there was so many layers of paint on the old Cadian helmets, on the old face part of the Cadian helmets, that you literally, it was just like this blob of just horrendous paint that you couldn't see any expressions, any detail on the face whatsoever. So that's what they were like, and I decided, you know what, it was getting to the point where I was actually embarrassed to use the Mordian 50th rifles on the Mordian Glory channel. I mean, how ridiculous is that? So I was like, you know what, this can't continue. It's time to restore the Mordian 50th rifles to their rightful, glorious place as the premier army, as the main army that is featured on this channel. And this is where we're up to after about 18 months. So I believe that it might be closer to 21 months actually. It's not quite 2 years. It's 2 years in about June. So yeah, it's about 18 months, we'll say, about a year and a half. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each section of the army. I'm going to give you a nice view of all the models that have been worked on. At the same time, I'll give you a little bit of background on both the hobbying sort of journey that I've been on, and also a bit of the fluff for the army, and then a bit of sort of tactical ideas behind why I've done the army this way. But mostly, guys, in all honesty, this is just a nice video for you guys to get an overall look at this army. And you know, if I'm going to be honest, it's kind of me showing off a little bit, and I'm quite proud of the progress that I've made. And what's the point in painting all these models if I can't show them off to you guys? And you know, that's what I was thinking. So admittedly, I am patting myself on the back a little bit here, guys, but please, you know, forgive me and indulge me, because I'm quite happy with what I've been able to create here. So without further ado, let's go through a summary of what's been painted and the structure of the army. So what you see before you guys is essentially 3 platoons of guardsmen with change. So what I mean by that is with extra bits. So there's about, there's more than 3 platoons of guardsmen here, and there is essentially a company of Imperial Guard, 3 maxed out platoons here, and these are bigger than the standard Imperial Guard platoon. The standard Imperial Guard platoon, according to several codexes, when you mash it all together and average it out, is a platoon commander with a command squad and between 2 and 5 squads of infantry, and then on top of that you can have attendant heavy weapon teams, attendant special weapon teams, and that is a platoon. Now what I've done with my platoons is I've actually based them on the 8th edition battalion detachment format. So what that means is I have gone for having sort of 2 commanders and some attendant characters as well, and then I've gone for 6 squads in each platoon currently, and then I've gone for some heavy weapon teams and some auxiliary support and some veteran support as well. But essentially these are larger than the standard Imperial Guard infantry platoon. This is just the way that I've currently got the army structured. What I'll probably do at some point when I've painted up a few more guardsmen, when I've got getting close to finishing the project, what I'll do is I'll sit down and I'll actually look at what this will look like if it was in the standard Imperial Guard format and not just in sort of the custom format that I've gone for here. So that's just to give you an idea of how I structured the army. It's in some essentially battalion detachments as per the 8th edition rulebook and 9th edition rulebook, and you could almost imagine it as an extended infantry platoon, as an expanded infantry platoon, as per the traditional Imperial Guard fluff. So I have 3 of them, and then I also have some extra bits on this side, and there's a bit of extra fluff going through here with these particular models here, my old school Stormtroopers, and we'll get into them when we get to them. But yeah, I hope you guys sort of like this overall army shot. And when I've gone back and tried to, I'm always trying to learn, always trying to improve my videos, and I've noticed that when I've done battle reports and done army overviews, I've stood way too close to the army. And so what I'm trying to do, guys, is improve my filming technique. So I'm doing a bit of a pulled back overview at the moment, and then we're going to go for a closer up view. I'd really appreciate any feedback that you guys can give me, and like I said, I'm always open to criticism. I'm always trying to improve what I'm doing here. And so any techniques, any preference on video format and filming style, please give me as much feedback as possible. I also, slight tangent, I also appreciate that I often move around a lot with the camera, and I'm trying my hardest to stay still and to film as steadily as possible. But again, any feedback in that would greatly appreciate it. But let's stop talking about this real world shit, guys. Let's get into the glory that is the Mordian 50th Rifles. Now, just before we get into the close-up, down and dirty views of the individual units, what I'd like to do is give you a little snippet, a brief overview of the fluff, of the background lore, the history of the Mordian 50th Rifle Regiment. This will just be a quick overview, guys. I'll try not to spend too long on it. I appreciate, it can be very easy for one to waffle on about one's headcanon. That might seem awesome in my own head, but might not be as cool as I think it is. So I'll just keep it as a brief overview. And again, if you're interested in more sort of headcanon, more lore videos, that is literally stuff that I've just made up in my own head for this regiment, please let me know, and I'm more than happy to do some lore videos. But the overview is the Mordian 50th Rifles are an infantry regiment. That means that they primarily use just infantry and foot slogging techniques. There's not many vehicles attached to the regiment, although they do have some chimeras and things like that. Now, the Mordian 50th Rifles, essentially, they have been fighting on the eastern fringe against the Tau Empire for a long time. In fact, for approximately 20 years, they've been on and off campaigning, crusading, fighting, counter-attacking, defending against the encroachment of the Tau Empire. And because of this, if they could have a preferred enemy, a preferred Xenos that they preferred to kill, then it would definitely be the Tau Empire. They absolutely hate the Tau with every fibre of their being. They'll kill anything that they're told to kill, but when they get to fight the Tau, they know that they are in for a good fight. And they are, despite the fact that they're kind of Mordian and they fight in what you would say is a Napoleonic style, which you think would be terrible against the Tau, they have learned to adapt their tactics and to fight against the Tau as effectively as possible. And these guys, they're proficient Tau killers. They're proficient Tau killers. And what they're also very adept at doing is, I would almost say, de-Tauifying planets. So when the Tau have come in and have tried the old talky talk and whisper whisper and overflow with their treacherous words and not fight like true people, then when the Imperials come along and decide, no, kick the Tau out, let's bring this planet back into the Imperial fold, often detachments of the Mordian 50th Rifles, if not the entire regiment itself, will be deployed to a planet to make sure that the Imperial citizens know who is in charge and to respect the authority of the Imperium. That's what they're good at. You know, Mordians are fantastic military police, as well as being fantastic line infantry soldiers and battlefield soldiers. So not only are they good at fighting on the battlefield, but they're also good at keeping the local populace in check. And when you've had a population which might have had their head turned towards the greater good, there's no better regiment than the Mordian 50th Rifles for taking that head and twisting it back into position, eyes front, stare at that Inquilla and make sure that you're worshipping the Emperor. So that's a little bit of a history of the regiment. Now, in terms of how this regiment has changed, I mean, if you've been campaigning against the Tau and been in service for such a long time, then of course, you know, this is, you know, as many regiments are recycled and rebuilt over years and years. Of course, things are gonna change, and the Mordian 50th Rifles, they settled on their planet on the eastern fringe, that's where they've been garrisoned. But over the time, you know, especially with the opening of the Great Rift, and you know, travel and reinforcements being potentially difficult to come across, over time the Mordians have had to accept that in order to keep their infantry regiment, which are, you know, infantry regiments always take high casualties, and especially the way the Mordians fight, in order to keep fighting fit, they have had to accept additional regiments into their fold and recruited from local populations where they've been stationed. So the reason that that's why you'll see lots of original metal Mordians, but you'll also see lots of converted plastic Cadians, and you'll also see in this army just a huge variety of one-off models as well, like an original Cadian soldier, one of the old metal ones. You've got, you know, despite the fact that the original Mordians themselves are from a perpetual night planet, which means they are typically known as being very pale, you'll see there's a variety of skin colours and just different races and people within the Mordian 50th Rifles. And at the end of the day, that is because that the Imperial Guard isn't fussy. They don't care if they don't care about race, colour, creed, or anything like that. What they care about is you being a good soldier. And so what I've tried to do is to represent the fact that the Mordian 50th Rifles, they are a very honourable regiment, a very proud regiment, so they won't allow themselves, which can be a bit annoying for the old Departamento Militarum, but they won't allow themselves to be absorbed into another regiment, but they will absorb and recycle remnants from other guard regiments who have been pretty badly battered, and they need, you know, they're not at full strength, and they never will be at full strength again themselves, and they need to be folded into another regiment. If you've ever read sort of the Gaunt's Ghost books, it's a bit like when the Tanith got below strength, they got the Vergastites folded into them, and then they also got the Belladon folded into them as well. Similar to that. If you've not read the Gaunt Ghost books, go and check it out. It's a really good series. But that sort of premise of folding battered regiments together is a well-established one in the lore. And the Mordian 50th Rifles, over many, many years of campaigning, have had many regiments folded into them, and they've recruited from many local populations. When they've gone in there, cracked some heads and restored order, they've recruited from many of the local worlds as well. So that is why, from a fluff point of view, you'll see such a diverse range of models. From breaking the fourth wall for a second, from a modelling point of view, I have a extensive guard range which I've been collecting for about 20 years, and that means I've got models from all sorts of editions, and I've got little one-offs here and there. I've got a couple of Last Chances, a couple of original Cadians, a couple of this, a bit of that, a bit of lad, a little bit of D, and the point is that I don't want to not use models because they don't look exactly like my original Metal Mordians or like my original Cadians. So I want to use those models. So the best way to do that is to say, oh, well, this one is just literally the last guy in a regiment that got folded in, or these guys are these couple of squads are the last couple of squads from regiment that got folded into the Mordian 50th Rifles. So it allows me to use a huge variety of models, and pretty much I can use whatever I want in this army, as long as I keep the colour scheme consistent. So there we go, guys. That's the fluff. That's the history of the regiment. That's the sort of why the army looks the way it is. I suppose now it would be a good time to go into each platoon and give you guys some close-up shots. I mean, I'm sure you've enjoyed this overall army view, but I think it's time we get up close and personal with the Mordian 50th Rifles. So here we have the first platoon of the Mordian 50th Rifles, and this is a classic metal Mordian Iron Guard platoon. The vast majority of the models in this platoon are Mordian ones, they're the old school ones, and nearly every single one of them is a metal model. Aside from the veterans and the Ogre and Auxiliary support, every model here is a metal one. And this is what I would describe as, you know, the platoon of honor, the old guard, the core of this first company of the Mordian 50th Rifles. They are all original old school Mordians. They wear the uniform, they know the drill, pardon the pun. They are badass. And these guys kind of serve as the cultural core of the regiment. You know, the other platoons that you see, of the company I should say, the other platoons that you see, they are not pure Mordian platoons, but they very much have been drilled into position and drilled into shape and whipped into shape by members of 1st Platoon of the 1st Company of the Mordian 50th Rifles. These guys are the creme de la creme of the Mordian 50th Rifles. So what we'll do is, just so you know, this is a hybrid platoon under my custom designation. Every regiment in the Guard has, you know, a pretty unique structure, and this is what I call a hybrid platoon. That means it has an equal amount of fire support and assault capabilities. So you'll find that there are 3 fire support infantry squads and 3 assault infantry squads. Fire support ones tend to have heavy weapons and longer ranged special weapons. The assault squads tend to have shorter ranged weapons such as melters and flamers, no heavy weapon, and they also have, the sergeant tends to be armed with some sort of close combat weapon such as a power sword. Not always the case, but often the case. Now, we'll go through each squad, but first, let's take a look at the characters for this platoon. So the first one, the senior officer of the 1st Company, 1st Platoon of the Mordian 50th Rifles is Colonel Falconhine, and he is an old school Mordian metal commander. He doesn't have the chainsword. Normally that fist he's holding in the air would hold a chainsword. This model, unfortunately, it didn't come with one, but he was the first, or it snapped off I should say, but he was the first officer that I painted, and I often run him as a company commander with bolter, because the bolt pistol he's got is actually quite big. It's an old school one, and so it's actually sort of halfway between a bolt pistol and a bolter, so I actually use it as a bolter. I can get away with that because bolters are kind of better than bolt pistols in 8th and 9th edition. His junior officer in the platoon is Lieutenant von Stahlheim, and he is armed with a power sword and las pistol, and he often outflanks in sort of clandestine and sneaky operations with the squad, the 1st Platoon's veteran squad, which we'll get to in a second. Him and the veterans were actually gifted to me by an awesome and loyal subscriber to the channel, and that is actually what gave me the inspiration to finally kick off and kickstart my Mordian 50th Rifles project, the Great Mordian Restoration Project. So if it wasn't for that subscriber, for that awesome dude, maybe I never would have got around to doing it. So massive thank you to not only him, but all my supporters, because there's a lot of models in here which have been, and lots of bits which have been donated by subscribers, and they're just absolutely, you guys are awesome. Honestly, this project wouldn't be half of what it was without the support of you guys. Moving along, we have the Platoon Flag, and then we also, as yet unnamed, it's Colour Sergeant Kel model, but as yet unnamed Colour Sergeant. And then we have the 2 advisors for this regiment, for this platoon. Now, the interesting thing about the Mordian 50 Rifles is you'll find a high amount of priests and commissars in the regiment. That is to do with some of the more extended background fluff of the regiment, but needless to say, very long story short, the Mordians, the reason they're going through this restoration, the reason they're going through this reskin, new uniforms, new me kind of thing, is because they are kind of trying to earn their honour back. They have a little bit of dishonour in the background, and because of that, they've got a lot of priests and commissars to make sure that they stay in line. If you're interested to know what the dishonour was, we can go into that another time. But essentially, that means that this guy is actually often run, this commissar is often run as the warlord in most games that I use, and he is simply known as the overseer. He makes sure that these guardsmen always do as they are told. And he's just simply referred to as a my lord or the overseer. By the guardsman behind his back, he can sometimes be known as the tyrant, because he will not hesitate to execute a Mordian for showing cowardice. We then have one of the priests. This is Brother Nathaniel, and he's got a little bit of backstory. Long story short, if you notice, he's absolutely festooned with relics and whatnot, and he actually is a bit of a hoarder, and he can sometimes forego the wider picture to make sure that a relic of the Imperium is secured. And so what you'll find with a lot of these characters is they've got a bit of a two-faced, bit of a tragic backstory. Some of them, you know, they're flawed characters, I should say. Anyway, we won't get into all of them because we'll be here for absolutely ever. But that's just to give you an idea of the kind of backstory that I've got into a lot of these characters. Now, going through some of these squads now, I'll go through slowly. We've got a las cannon grenade launcher squad. Sergeant's got a las pistol and chainsword. We've got another 2 squads here with missile launcher, grenade launcher, and sergeant's las pistol and chainsword. Hazard stripes on all the chainswords. This is a old Last Chances model called Hero. Love that model. And then on these squads here, we've got 3 assault squads. We've got a Mordian sergeant with a las pistol and power sword. We have a classic metal Cadian melter gun. We have another Last Chances model here. This one is known as Brains. And then we have 2 more squads with just a classic metal Cadian melter gunner, and then a classic Mordian metal melter gunner. Those guys are pretty hard to come across. And then, of course, las pistol and power sword and all those squads. We have 3 original metal Mordian mortars, original crew, and then we have the aforementioned veteran squad. These guys, my veteran squads, are always armed the same: 3 plasma guns, and then a plasma pistol and a power sword on the sergeant. We'll just zoom in on those a little bit to give you a nice up close. You can see that sergeant particularly highly decorated, and all of them, you see extra purity seals, extra bits of equipment to make. These guys are definitely veterans, and they are actually equipped with, I should say equipped with, they are modelled with Victoria miniature heads, and all the other conversions you'll see are Anvil industry heads. I was going to go for more Victoria miniature heads, but I wanted to make sure that I always recognised this squad, because they were the squad that started the whole project off. On the back we have the first of the Ogrin Auxilia, 6 Ogrin, Ripper guns, big knives, and these were converted from Age of Sigmar Ogres, and I used the Ripper guns from the legit Ogrin squads, and the hats were made out of milliput, and the sort of symbols in the hats and the symbols on the bellies were taken from the Militarum Tempestus Scion kits. So moving on to the second platoon. This one is led by Major von Bülow, and he is armed typically with a las pistol and chainsword. Nothing's fancy about him. He is, however, if you notice, if I just turn that, he is actually decorated with the Iron Star of Mordia. This is an original Baneblade commander, and was actually again gifted to me by a really close friend, someone who I actually met through the channel, who was just originally a subscriber, and then we were able to meet up one day. You know, don't believe what they say. Not everyone on the internet is a murderer. And we were able to meet up one day, and now we're actually pretty firm friends. I think we speak every week. So, you know, thank you, Alex. Again, absolutely fantastic model. And yeah, I mean, it sounds very formal when I'm talking about a friend, but you know, just yeah, absolutely awesome. Thanks, mate. Iron Star of Mordia. So he is a highly decorated officer. With that, he is accompanied by Lieutenant Steve. He was actually unnamed on what is one of my original models in the whole army. And then when I had a battle report against Winter's SEO, Winters named him Lieutenant Steve. So that is what he is. Again, unnamed flag bearer at this moment. And then we have Lord Commissar Sobel. And he is an absolute... He is a pretty bad guy. He is all about presentation. Not a single button can be out of place. Not a single, if there's any rust on any equipment, that guardsman, if he's lucky, will get lashes. If he's unlucky, will simply be executed on the spot. And you better believe there better not be any dust on any buttons, any jump wings or anything like that, because if there are dust on your buttons, on your lapels, then you are going to get your head blown off. So after Lord Commissar Sobor, we have Brother Matthias. He is just a old priest who has been campaigning for many years, and he believes that faith can overturn galaxies, and often will be taken away in a religious fervour, and sometimes will lead men into glorious bayonet charges, even when the better thing to do would be to maybe tactically fall back, get back in the fight and shoot. So sometimes he gets a bit carried away with the old bayonet charges, but you know, if you're a guardsman and the priest tells you to fix bayonets, you're going to do as you're told. So now we have, because of Matthias's tendency to charge into combat, we have a full assault platoon here. No hybrid half and half here, guys. This platoon is equipped to fix bayonets and charge down anything from grots to Imperial Knights. These guys are going to bring it down. So we have, this is the first of the converted Cadian squads. All of these guys, I said, have been converted with anvil industry heads and other various bits. The first one is equipped with a Sergeant Las Pistol and Chainsword and a Flamer. Nice, cheap, disposable squad. When back in 8th edition, when these guys were built, they were a really good squad to have as a screening unit that could overwatch the enemy. That's why I actually have a lot of Flamers in this platoon. They were often the screening platoon that would die first, die gloriously, but take a few of the bastards down with them with the Flamers on Overwatch. That's all changed now, unfortunately, but they still always good to have some cheap squads with a single special weapon. That is the old metal Cadian medic. I've actually got a few of those throughout the army. We've got the second squad here. This one is armed with a melter gun sergeant with a las pistol and power sword. This is an original old school Cadian sculpt, and I actually have a bit of a backstory of this guy. The reason he's in different equipment to everyone else is because his entire regiment to a man was wiped out by the Tau. His regiment was just a PDF platoon, PDF regiment on a like an old Cadian one that had just sort of been forgotten about, and the Tau came in and they had old equipment by Imperial standards, and the Tau just tore them to pieces. They fought to the last man. He is the last man, but out of respect for his lost comrades, the Mordians allowed him to keep his equipment because it is, you know, sort of his history. So that was a mark of respect for him. Like, even though he was the last one, he never gave up, and the Mordians respect that. We've then got a musician, drummer, just a lasgun guy, bits from anvil industry, drummer bits from anvil industry, and then again we have another squad, las pistol, chainsword, flamer, nice and cheap, nice and screening. Coming over to the next batch of 3 squads, we've got these guys. They're actually the legs and the bodies and the heads and everything, but the weapons are from anvil industries, and they actually they're like my grenadier squad. And the backpack there is, should say, the Vox pack there is from the Scion kit as well. And then we've got a plasma pistol and a flamer. And then we have a melter gun and a power sword sergeant in that squad. And then we have another Mordian metal infantry squad. And this one is just armed with a power sword and a flamer. And then we have the veteran squad with all the plasmas, led by the old Colonel Schaffer model. And this one is just a veteran sergeant with plasma pistol and power sword. And then we have another set of mortars, because mortars are awesome. And these are converted Cadians. You'll see with some of the Cadian models, I have allowed them to keep their sort of tri-dome helmets. The reason for that is either it's a metal model and I don't want to butcher it, or in this case it's a very unique model from the 1999 or 2000 Games Day. This is the original Cadian sculpt before the plastic one, and he is actually in metal, and it's really cool, and I don't want to butcher that model. Oh, and behind him we have another one of the last chances, the guy in the boonie hat with the sort of hunter's lasgun, so he's really cool as well. And then we have a big old block of Ogrins. So you'll notice that every platoon has its core infantry, a veteran auxiliary support, heavy weapons squad support, and then abhuman support as well. That's kind of the vibe that we go with. Every platoon has a bit of fire support, a bit of veterans, and some core infantry and some abhumans. Big block of 9, and again they're all Bulgrim models, and again the hats were made out of milliput, and the symbols on the hats were from spare bits from the Scion kit. Or like I said, loads of spare eagles in that kit, eagles and skulls. Now moving over here, we have 3rd Platoon. And unfortunately, with 3rd Platoon, haven't got round to any naming of any of the characters. So unfortunately for my fluff, but fortunately for you guys, who I'm sure this video is already going on quite a long time, we have a senior officer here with plasma pistol and a power sword. He's an old metal Cadian lieutenant. And then we have another old Cadian metal lieutenant with bolt pistol and chainsword. Then we have an Anvil Industry Lord Commissar, and he is armed with a plasma pistol and a power fist. He's actually quite interesting. He's a little smaller. He's a little smaller than the other models in the army. The scale's slightly off, so just be aware of that if you're going to buy this model. What I like to say is he's actually a junior commissar, but they don't want him to like not be respected, so that's why he covers himself up with the with like the full gas mask and stuff, so people don't realise he's actually only like sort of 16, 17. He's like a commissar cadet, but he's always got something to prove. That's why he's got like the plasma pistol and the power fist, because he's like, oh, I'm a man kind of thing. But he covers himself up because he doesn't want anyone to not respect him for his young age. And then we've got another priest here, old school Empire metal priest. I've always wanted this model, like, ever since I saw it, and I was finally able to get my hands on it off eBay. So yeah, absolutely love that model. It's just the hammer it can't take the hammer as anything special. It's just a las pistol and chainsword. And then we have 3rd Platoon, which I went for something a little bit different with 3rd Platoon. You'll notice that they don't have peaked caps. A lot of them have got beret heads, and those are from the Scion kit. Now I have a relatively large Scion force. And I had loads of the beret heads left over, and I thought, well, you know, I'm buying loads and loads of heads from Anvil Industries, but why not use some of these beret heads up? So I did a squad of them, and I liked them so much, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a platoon of these guys. I'm going to do a platoon of the beret head guys. And how I justify it in the fluff is that these guys are actually, they're a specialist platoon. They are a recon platoon, which is why they're all almost like a vanguard platoon, and they're the ones that when the rest of the regiment is marching around, going to the battlefields in their marching columns, these guys actually go on the flanks. They are often in the vanguard. They go ahead if there's any vehicles that the guard have, any chimeras. They'll often hitch a ride aboard there. And they'll be the ones that are often first to the battlefield, or if they're going to a place to defend, because Mordians often like to hold the line. These guys will get set up and they'll prep the area for the rest of the regiment to turn up. Which is why, even though they're kind of meant to be sort of fast moving and more of like a recon element, it's why you'll find that they're a fire support platoon, because these guys are actually often, like I said, first to the battlefield. They're the ones that are often, they've prepped the area, they've secured the buildings, and they've got to have heavy weapons to make sure that they can deal with any threat they come across. Also, if they're on the flanks of the marching columns, or they're ranging ahead, then they may encounter the vanguard of the enemy. And these guys are used to fighting Tau, and the Tau have lots of long-range firepower, and the Tau often use devil fishes and battle suits to get into position quickly. And if all you've got is maybe like a grenade launcher and las guns in your squad, you're not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with that Tau vanguard. So you've got to make sure that you've got long-range heavy firepower if you're the ones that are more than likely going to be encountering the Tau first, which is why I've actually given these guys loads of heavy weapons. So it makes sense from if they're in the vanguard, and it makes sense that they've actually the first ones that have got to the battlefield and they're all set up and ready to rock and roll. While you'll see lots of sandbags and everything, that's kind of to or like ruined bricks. It's kind of to represent these guys got dug in a while ago when we're playing the battle, when we're playing the game. So yeah, 6 fire support squads here. We've got 3 with las cannon and melter gun, sergeants with las pistol and chainsaw. They're already getting pretty expensive. I thought keep the sergeants cheap. That's an old school Voxcaster. And it's an original metal Cadian Command Squad one, and then and then again with the melter guns, they're all original metal Cadian melter guns. Then we've got the las cannons. Over here, we've got Sergeant with bolter and chainsword, Socket Space Marines, and then we've got heavy bolters in each squad and grenade launchers in each squad. And you'll notice that every one of these squads has got a Voxcaster, because again, they're sort of the recon ranging ahead guys. Got the veteran squad. Now these guys do have peak caps because they're sort of veterans of the overall regiment. There are some veterans actually over here which have berets, so I may actually swap those two round so that there's more beret heads for the veterans for this platoon. Got some autocannons, and then we've got some Word Vein Psychers now, or Weird Vein Psychers, I never know how to say it. Sanction Psychers, that's the old school name for them. Now I've got a squad of 9 here, but what I often like to do, what you'll notice is like only 6 of them are proper Psyker models, and the other 3 are the careful overseers to make sure that if these Psychers are deployed, that they are kept a close eye on. But the Mordian 50 Rifles absolutely hates Psychers, and it hates using Psychers, and there's a reason for that. We won't get into it now, but there is a reason for that. So I actually didn't want to paint up any Psychers for this army, but then I also said to myself, because of that fluff that I've got going on in the background, but in fact, one of the reasons why the Mordian 50 Rifles got sort of dishonoured was the fact they were using Psychers and other unsanctioned tactics. But also I had all these Psychers, and the whole point is that I'm meant to be restoring every model in the army. So I was like, look, I'll restore them, but I'm probably never going to use them on the battlefield, or rarely use them on the battlefield. So that is actually the 3 main platoons, the 3 main company, the first company. That's the sort of bulk of the project done. So that is a lot of infantry. I think if you add it all up, there's about 70, 81, 87 in the first platoon, and then a similar number. There's about, I think about averages out there being about 90 in each platoon. So, there's about 270 infantry in those first platoons, roughly speaking. Give or take. I know how many are painted overall. It's 306. It's 306 infantry and 2 chimeras. Is the overall painting? Is the overall numbers painted? Now then, like I said, that's the main first company. That is the first company, 3 first platoons of the Mordian 50 Rifles. Now there are a couple of bits that kind of remain, a couple of gaps, I should say. Firstly, I actually want to add a proper command squad to each platoon. At the moment, I've just got like the characters that function as a command squad, but I actually want to add a proper command squad, because that's what each platoon would have. They would have a command squad. So that's a gap. That's why I've got these 2 flags painted up initially. I haven't got around to painting a flag for 3rd platoon yet, but I definitely will do. And so in terms of if I really want to finish out and flesh out these 3 platoons, what I want to do is add a command squad and then also add a command chimera to each platoon. I've done 2 already, and we'll get into that in a second. But the thing is that these platoons keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's kind of a little intimidating. Like, they started off as just like 5 infantry squads and a couple of characters, and now there's 6 infantry squads, 4 characters, heavy weapon teams, veteran squads, auxiliary support. So they're expanding, expanding, expanding. It just goes to show, like, there is definitely mission creep in this project, to say the least. I've definitely had to buy more models to then like flesh platoons out to where I want them in a sort of a fluff perspective. Anyway, let's get on to the extra bits. Last sort of 5 minutes, guys. Let's get on to the extra bits that I've done for the project. So what we have here, guys, the first section of the extra bits is 5 squads of old school 3rd edition metal Stormtroopers. They're not called Scions, they're called Stormtroopers. The fluff behind these guys is actually that they are not Militarm Tempestus Scions. They didn't go to the Scholar Progenium. That's not what they're about. These guys are the best of the best, the hardcore. Okay, the veterans of the veterans. When a new regiment is absorbed into the Mordian 50th Rifles, the most hard-ass survivors of that regiment will be selected, and soldiers who display hyper-aggression in battle will be if they survive, will be selected and promoted up into the prestigious Assault Corps, also known as the Stormtroopers, and they will be the ones that spearhead the battle. They're the ones that always get sent into to open the breaches in the enemy lines, to use infiltration tactics. And that's an actual tactic from sort of World War One. A lot of the army sort of World War One inspired. And these guys are literally just the most hard-ass veterans in the regiment. The sort of fluff justification, that's the fluff justification. The modelling justification is I love second edition Stormtroopers, but they're very out of date, and their equipment looks very out of date in comparison to the new mid-time Tempesta style models. So the fluff behind this is this Inquisitor, who is sort of overseeing, pulling the strings behind the scenes of the Mordian 50 rifles. He saw the Mordians were putting together this assault corps based on the advice of Sergeant Dutch of the Kazakin, and again that we'll get into. He's got a whole bit of fluff background as well. But Sergeant Dutch was putting the assault corps together based on his old Kazakin days when he got folded into the Mordian 50 rifles, and the Inquisitor and some of the commissars pulled some strings that they had in the Departmentum Minitorum in the Administratum, and were like, and said, well, look, we want some better gear for these guys. And the Departmentum Minitorum was like, well, we can't give you the Scion gear because that's the Scions get the best gear. That's the whole point. But we do have this kind of out of date reserve rear echelon. If things start going to pot, we can give the Stormtroopers this gear kind of equipment lying around. So look, if you want the second line, the third line, the reserve equipment, you can have that. You know, we try and give Scions all the best equipment. This is kind of old, out of date equipment. And the military, the regiment were like, yeah, of course, like it might be out of date by your standards, but you know, by our standards, a Hell gun is always going to be better than a las gun. You know, so that's why, that's sort of the fluff justification for why I've got these older school sort of models in the regiment. There's about 25 of them and 4 characters, and so then on to the other extra bits. I've started working on some of the vehicles for the Mordian 50 rifles, because despite the fact of them being an infantry regiment, I own a shitload of tanks, because I used to be a treadhead before I became an infantry guy. And so it's, I'm actually, scarily guys, I'm getting to the point where I think I'm running out of infantry to paint. Well, I'm not, because I've got like another 100 or so, but that's it. I've got like maybe 100 more infantry to paint. So that's pretty scary. Like we're definitely getting into the end. We're in the end game now. But these are my 2 command chimeras for 1st and 2nd platoon, and they're armed with multi-laser, storm bolter, heavy bolter, and hunter killer missile. And I've given them the dozer blades and the side skirt armor just for looks, just for rule of cool. I won't turn them around now, but there are transfers on the back that designate, you know, Mordian 50th rifles and then which platoon each one is assigned to. And then last but not least, I've got a few extra plasma guns painted up because, you know, in 8th edition plasma is king, and if I wanted to play this army more competitively than with the sort of fluff loadouts that I've gone with, then I had 6 extra plasma guns that I could fold into the regiment. These are from all over the place, to be honest. There's actually a couple of grav guns in there which I converted up to look like plasma guns. You literally can't tell the difference when they're on the battlefield. Then we have the extra advisors of the regiment and extra officers, and this is actually the overall commander of the 1st company. He needs a little command squad. This is kind of like, I guess, the sort of company command squad, but he is Lord Commander Vossenberg. You may recognise that name if you followed my videos back in 7th edition, the Blood and Shadows campaign. He is Lord Commander Vossenberg, and he commands the 1st company of the Mordian 50th Rifles. Then I've got an unnamed lieutenant, and I've got my 3 regimental advisors, the Master of Ordnance, the Officer of the Fleet, and the Ashpath. That's working from right to left. And that is all the models painted up for the Mordian 50th Rifles. That is the company structure, the platoon structure, the assault corps, the fluff, the modelling, that's everything. That's where I'm up to, guys. And it is a total of 306 models. I mean, I may have miscounted, but it's 308 models, 306 infantry, and 2 vehicles. Now, what do I have left to do? Well, I have a lot more vehicles to do, guys, but vehicles are relatively quick to paint up. You know, it's always surprising. It doesn't take as long to paint vehicles as it does to paint infantry. But I've got, I guess it's just more surface area, but less fine detail, I guess. But I've got several tanks that need painting up. In fact, I've got 3 Bane Blades that need painting up for this regiment. I've got 3 Bane Blades. I've got 7 Lehman Russes. I actually might up that. I might have to get a couple more Lehman Russes, but I've got 3 Bane Blades, 7 Lehman Russes, 2 Basilisks, a Hydra, Hellhounds, Sentinels. Yeah, I've got probably about 20 vehicles to paint and about 100 infantry, about 100 to 150 infantry left. So I would say I'm about 3/4 of the way through the infantry, but I'm about 2/3 of the way through the army. So 75% through the infantry, but only 66%, maybe even only 60% through the whole army itself. Now I have got a bit of a drive on at the moment to get more of these guys painted. In fact, I've got 2 more infantry squads and 2 officers on my painting desk right now, and a Lehman Russ Demolisher on my painting desk right now, and I've stripped down 3 other Lehman Russes as well. So we're definitely well on the way to finishing this project, but it'll probably be another year. Maybe, depends on if Games Workshop release any new guard kits, because then it might get extended a little bit. But the plan is to do the great, and I've got loads of scions that need painting as well. But the point is, boiling it all down, I'm going to stop moving the camera side to side. I'm going to keep it nice and still, as I said. I have probably got another 6 to 12 months of work to put into this army. I would like, bear in mind there's loads of other projects that always pull my attention away. It would be interesting to see where I am at the end of this year. It would be nice to think that I might actually have all the infantry done by the end of this year, and that maybe by the 3-year mark, because that would be by the 2.5-year mark, maybe by the 3-year mark I will have, which will be next June, not this June, next June, I would have, which is about 13 months away, maybe a bit 50 months away. I would like to think that I would have all the tanks and have the Great Mordian Restoration Project finished. I may get it done sooner than that, but I definitely want to have at least all the infantry done by the end of this year. And then, who knows, maybe a Great Mordian expansion project? Am I crazy? Who knows? Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please leave lots and lots of comments if you want to see more videos like this. This is but one of my armies and but one of my Imperial Guard armies. I have an entire Steel Legion regiment, the 234th Armageddon Mechanized Infantry. They are supported and basically they're supported by my Death Corps of Krieg army, and then I have my Scions, which is only a small force. But I've got about 4 Imperial Guard regiments, 3 Guard regiments and 4 Guard armies, including the Scions. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know if you'd like to see some more of these sort of army showcase videos, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.